What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another video for you guys. And today we're going to be debating about whether Dominic Solanke is the right striker for Spurs. And to go through and talk about this issue with us, there's been a lot of debate around the Spurs community ever since the Solanke news has broken. It looks like Tottenham are looking to secure a deal for Dominic Solanke for around £65 million. And there has been a lot of debate whether Solanke is the right striker for Spurs, and it's garnered a lot of debate on social media. Some people against, some people pro. So we thought we'd try and represent each side of the issue here, and to talk about Dominic Solanke, whether he is the right striker for Spurs. We've got James, we've got Mitch, we've got Tom, and we've got Matthew here to talk about Dominic Solanke. We're going to have a pro Solanke and a kind of against Solanke side. So James and Matthew are going to kind of be representing Solanke's skeptical side, and Mitch and Tom are going to be representing the kind of very pro the pro Solanke side, people who want Solanke to join Tottenham. So I guess I'll just say hi to everyone first. James, nice to have you on the channel. Appreciate you coming on. You're a bit skeptical. You're a bit skeptical about Solanke joining Tottenham. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily, like it's him specifically, Solanke, that I'm like, definitely not. I just sort of think about all the strikers in the Premier League, and the whole thing about Spurs moving to our phenomenal stadium, which is a phenomenal stadium, that we would have a little bit more cash to do certain things. And if you also think about the fact that obviously we all know Harry Kane is gone, but I'm hearing it's kind of like Solanke or Ivan Toney. Like, why can't Spurs go big and get them both? Like that's where I'm sitting. Why do we have to, have someone? No offense, from Bournemouth. Like, yes, he'd be great, but I feel like Toney would be better. But why can't we go big? Why can't we get both? Why do we have to sort of pigeon, ourselves into that particular one? That's my thoughts. Is that I think he is a decent player. Absolutely. If you're looking down at the bench and you've got Solanke on the bench to come on with half an hour to go, and you've just taken Toney off, 100%. That is a Champions League team with Sonny, and whether we would then keep Richie would be probably not. So that is my thought, is that looking at us financially as a club, we can compete with the big boys. Like, we pretend that we can't, but we absolutely can. So why can't we go big? And if it's not both, if it's not Toney and Solanke, why can't it be Solanke and the chap from Man City who they want to get rid of? I know 80 million is a lot of cash, or 85, whatever Atletico are trying to get him for. But yeah, I want us to go big, because I think it's Spurs' time to be winning some stuff, not just trying to compete for some stuff.
All right. Mitch, you're more kind of more pro kind of bringing Solanke in. Why would you say Solanke is the right striker for Spurs?
I just think the main thing for Spurs, obviously, is getting a striker through the door. That is the main thing, because we missed that last season, obviously, with Kane out of the picture and Richarlison injury prone and things like that. So obviously he didn't live up to the hype. But I just think the main thing for me is Solanke fits the system that we want to play. And obviously he can get you goals. And obviously that's what we need in the team. So get him in.
Matthew, you're kind of with James a bit more skeptical about maybe bringing Solanke in. Is there a reason why you don't think he's the right striker for Tottenham?
I think the main thing for me is that the Solanke signing sort of reminds me in a weird way of the Richarlison signing when it happened. And, we all know sort of how that went. I mean, don't get me wrong, Richarlison's had his moments, but he's scored 12 league goals in 2 seasons at the club. He hasn't lived up to the price tag. He hasn't lived up to being our number 9. And I was looking into it, when we signed Richarlison, I think he had 48 goals, and it was 173 games in the Premier League at that point. And Solanke has 29 in 134. And considering Solanke is a couple of years older now than Richarlison was when we signed him, it just feels like similar price tag as well. You know, that sort of bottom half Premier League club. It feels like a very similar signing. And I know Solanke is coming off a really good season, but that's the only good season he's really had in the Premier League. And I could just see this going down the exact same route as the Richarlison signing. And yeah, that's why I'm quite skeptical about it.
And Tom, what are your thoughts on Solanke? Would he be the perfect fit for Spurs?
In my opinion, I think he sort of fits into what we want to do sort of perfectly. I mean, he's like, yeah, we can look at individuals, look at Alvarez, and look at sort of players like that, Gyökeres, but you got to think in how they're going to fit into the system, not just how they're going to do individually. And I think that Tony can bring in some really good pressing attributes. He can hold the ball up very well. I mean, and judging from last season, he's scored many sort of different types of goals, different finishes, heading ability. And I think the way we want to play, as Mitch said, you know, most of our goals last season came from just cutting it across the goal. And we need someone in there that can just sort of, you know, bully a defender. You know, Son's not the strongest in the world, so he sort of struggled when he was playing up front. So having that sort of more physical presence up front is great. And also to back that up as well, Solanke, his injury record, he didn't get injured at all last season, if I'm right. Whereas sort of, you know,
Played all 8 games, yeah.
Yeah, he played all the games. So whereas Richarlison, you know, you don't know what you're going to get with him. So, I mean, it would be quite nice to have them as sort of like rotating within each other if they're both fit. But I think going for 2 strikers, I think like getting Tony and Solanke is a bit sort of too much because they're sort of both similar profiles. And then what do you do with Rishi? Because he's, I think, well, from what I've last heard, he wants to stay. So I don't know about getting 2 strikers thing, like sort of having 3 of the same sort of abilities as such.
Yeah, with the news actually just breaking over the past half an hour or so with Richarlison saying he is going to be staying, essentially. So he said his in terms of the money coming from Saudi, he said the money's big, but my dreams are bigger. So that suggests he's definitely going to be here next season. So I'll go to the pro Solanke side. I'll go to Mitch in terms of Richarlison. What Matthew was saying, you know, his goal scoring record was probably maybe better before signing for Tottenham than Solanke's is right now. So for 65 million for Solanke, considering, you know, last season was, I think, the first season in his career he's got over 10 goals in a Premier League season. Does he represent for you enough of an upgrade on Richarlison to justify the outlay?
I'd say going off last season, obviously, yes. But obviously, like you said, it's his first season where he's just got over 10 goals. So in that aspect, you can also say no. But obviously, where we haven't had a striker at all, because obviously Richarlison was meant to be that person last season, and obviously injured, couldn't get back to fully fitness after that. I feel like just getting a striker through the door and someone who can, like he played all of last season, stay fit in the Premier League. He's done that, and that's what we need.
And what do you feel about that, Tom? Do you feel like just the fact that he has such a great injury record, is that enough of a reason to go big on him and to say he's going to be an upgrade on Richarlison? Just the fact that he can stay fit.
Yeah, I think it can, because what he can also offer, I've watched a lot of, ever since sort of we've had the links, I've sort of heightened my interest within Solanke recently, and I've sort of watched him and seen that he can link up play quite nicely, sort of little flicks around the corner and things like that. Just what Kulusevski's been doing, playing sort of on that false 9/striker position. So maybe those two could sort of bond, make a little bond together. And you know, he's not just a striker; he can add other things to his game. And I'm sure Ange will make him adapt. And if Ange wants him, you know, I 100% back Ange. Whatever Ange wants, just go and do it. I mean, he's the guy. He knows what he wants.
And to you, James, talking about you know, being a bit skeptical on Solanke, I was looking into his stats over the past 4 years. If you include his seasons in the Championship over the last 4 years, he's got 94 goal contributions in 157 games, and you know, it's a pretty good record. He's coming into next season in red hot form. Obviously, 19 goals last season, which is actually the same as Ollie Watkins, who a lot of people were waxing lyrical about last season. So in 2024, is 65 million really that big of an outlay, like for a striker who's in that kind of form?
I think it is 65 million for a striker from Bournemouth. Again, you know, no offense. Is that as big as Spurs' ambition? Would Solanke start for City? No. Liverpool? No. Man United? Maybe.
Would he not? Yeah, would he not?
Chelsea? No.
Yes.
Bakuna? No. Do you know what I mean?
He would
I'm not.
start for Chelsea, wouldn't he? Would he not start for Chelsea?
I mean, Chelsea have about 98 possible people in every position. But I go back to the days. Do you boys remember when we had Berbatov and Keane and Darren Bent all in the squad? All at the same time. We had those like phenomenal strikers. Is Solanke as good as Berber? Definitely not. Keno? Definitely not. Bent? Probably. So yeah, I know the game has changed a lot, and clubs don't have as many strikers as we did at one point. We definitely need someone to lead the line, 100%. Because we don't want to have the days when we had Adebayor up front as our only striker. Those were difficult times. But in regards to other strikers in the league, what about a question to everyone? If Sim doesn't mind me asking,
go for it.
If you could have any striker from the league that's not Haaland, obviously, who would you boys pick? Mitch?
Go on, Mitch.
Is this like realistically, or just if you could get anyone?
I'm just curious. I'm also quite curious to see if anyone picks Solanke. But yeah, in regards to if you could have any striker in the league that's not Haaland to play at number 1 for Spurs, who are you picking?
For us, I'd probably go get Watkins, but that's not realistic.
Tom?
I'd go for Alexander Isak.
Matthew?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Isak. I think
I was going to go for Isak as well. I wouldn't go for Watkins, but look, sorry, Solanke, but we don't live in that world, do we? That we can pick and choose exactly what we want. We have to make some compromises. And Solanke's at a club who we can definitely negotiate with, and we can definitely attain him from. He's in form where he's in the form of a striker that's the kind of form we're looking at, and he's the kind of profile we're looking at as well. And if you're looking at realistic strikers, sorry.
Is he not a 30 million sort of player? Like 60?
I would say in 2024, he's probably a 50 million pound player. 65 is maybe a bit overpriced, but you might have to pay a premium because of the shortage of strikers out there and the fact he's English as well. And they're coming from a Premier League team. Premier League teams aren't that desperate for money in this day and age. So, I mean, I'm not here saying that we have to sign him. I'm just trying to justify that price tag. I think in 2024, when a striker scores that amount of goals, that their price gets elevated immediatally.
I think we've got to be realistic as well with who we're signing. Like, we're in Europa League, we're not in Champions League. Yes, we've got a stadium. Yes, we have a nice pull, but we're not on the level of Man City, Liverpool, even Arsenal. I hate to say it, but we're not going to be able to get the caliber of players these teams are going to be able to get in. So we need to sort of take a step back and just, be more realistic. We're never going to go get Alvarez for whatever it was, 91 million euros. I mean, I would have loved it. Don't get me wrong. Would have been great. I mean, we just got to, keep realistic and just keep backing the boys. And I'm sure results will come if we trust the process.
Going to Matthew, when you're looking at Solanke at the moment, is there not a case? He's 20. I think he's 26 at the moment. Is there not a case to say he could now be coming into his own? You're looking at Watkins and Tony. Those are two strikers who probably also didn't start hitting their prime form up until a similar age to Solanke, and these are strikers that a lot of Tottenham fans are advocating for. And Solanke is now hitting that age. Last season was probably his first season in the Premier League where he was playing under a real front foot attacking manager, and he put up those kind of numbers. So is there a case to say we could be getting Solanke right as he's coming into his prime?
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. And I do see the argument for that. I just do fear as well. We saw what happened when he went to Liverpool. And the problem you sometimes have with these profile of players is that you've sort of got the big fish in a small pond syndrome in terms of, he is the main man at Bournemouth. He is, based on last season, that's probably maybe the best Premier League season a Bournemouth players ever had for Bournemouth. So, he's really thriving off that, playing in that sort of, without being disrespectful to Bournemouth, that smaller club, with much lesser ambitions than a club like Tottenham. And I just fear that maybe going to a club like Spurs with much bigger ambitions, you know, he could sort of maybe crumble under that pressure. And I just don't know if he's the ambitious signing that, you know, we all want to see. I think if we had maybe gone out, or if we'd already signed someone like Eze, perhaps, and then we were going to go and sign Solanke, it would be like, okay, you know, I can understand that. But I do fear that this will be the marquee signing of the summer if it goes ahead. And I don't think anyone would have wanted that as the marquee signing before the window started. I just think that sometimes I feel like Spurs are a club which kind of breed mediocrity in terms of it's so easy for a player to come and be settled at this big stadium on usually quite good money, living in London without ever too much pressure. You know, you've got players that will underperform for years and stay at the club, you know, Lo Celso and Ndombele. They don't get moved on and they're just happy to sit there and collect a wage. And I just fear that I don't know, you know, obviously I can't say this about Solanke personally, but I just don't know if he has that big player mentality, if he's that ambitious signing that we really should be making to sort of, you know, actually back Ange Postecoglou.
What do you think about that, Tom? You know, what Matthew's saying, you know, Solanke's had actually a couple of opportunities at bigger clubs. You know, he was at Chelsea for a time and actually was quite highly thought of there, never really made the grade, then moved on to Liverpool, again, had a few seasons in the Premier League, never really made the grade there. So do you fear that this could be a player who needs to be the big fish in a small pond kind of player?
I don't know, because I think Ange will do his vetting process, as we all know, with all his players. He makes sure, you know, he ensures that the players are there for the team, not to be like individual players, as I referenced at the start. You know, not like players like Ndombele, like they just want to be, you know, just stars and individuals. He wants them to play for the team, work for the team, and I think Solanke will definitely offer that, judging by all his like sort of pressing statistics that he offers that I've seen. And just, yeah, I think Ange knows what he's doing when it comes to sort of bringing in the right type of players for the team.
What do you think about that, Mitch? Do you think Solanke has the mentality to be the leading striker at a club like Tottenham?
Well, I think the fact that he's obviously played for Bournemouth last season and he's got that many goals, obviously, with that team, I feel like if you do put him in this Tottenham side with better players and better midfielders and things like that, he could only go on and score more goals.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that's just what I think should happen. Whether it does or not, we'll find out, hopefully. Yeah,
and so James, like going back to that, in terms of the profile of striker, it's clear that Ange is looking for a kind of bigger, more physical kind of target man, I think, this summer, and someone who can, I think, stretch defenses, but also be a real threat inside the penalty area, especially aerially, which is, I think, something we've been missing a bit over the last season. So if you're looking at that profile, I mean, if we're keeping Richarlison, is there who else are you looking at in terms of a realistic signing for Tottenham that we can get?
Surely it's got to be Tony. You know, you guys are
just going back to that. When you talk about Tony, he's not coming into this season in as good as form as Solanke. You know, he didn't have the best second half of the season when he came back. Solanke's coming into this in red hot form. And as much as I might agree that Tony could be a better player, in terms of a better fit for Tottenham, could you argue Solanke might be a better fit?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say it feels like Ange wants a warhorse right up front who's going to press the hell out of the opposition team. That's obvious. So who will do that better? That's Solanke. Like he will. He will run more than Tony. But who's the better player, the better finisher, who has more physical presence and, you know, better jump and physicality in the box? It's probably Tony. But then, like you guys all said, in regards to the team, yeah, if Ange wants someone to just run and press and run and run and run and, you know, not give him any attitude, because maybe we've already spoken to Tony and there was an attitude issue. I'm not sure. That's sort of what I read in the press. But yeah, if we do get Solanke, 100%, I'll be behind the boys and I think he'll be all right. My only worry is that it's slightly an underwhelming signing, and he's come from Bournemouth, so you don't want him to sink going to, let's be honest, a much bigger team.
But if we're comparing, I'm assuming, we're saying it's underwhelming because last year we sold Harry Kane for 100 million euros, and if we're looking to, for someone to come in for him, it want to be someone that's going to excite the fan base. And you're probably right. So if I told you a year ago Solanke was be our replacement, you'd probably be like, well, we got all this money, we just sold him. Is that the best we can do? But what player would satisfy that apart from a player who's probably unattainable?
Yeah, potentially players that are unattainable. But I swear a few seasons ago, even when Kane was still there, we were sort of muted to maybe getting Vlahovic. Again, I think he would have been good. Obviously, this is before Ange's time, but he would have been a good striker. Would he press as much as Solanke? I don't know. But yeah, my only worry going into a season trying to get Champions League with an injury-prone Richie and Solanke. I also get slightly worried about, all like the youth projects at Spurs that seem to come and go. Like, why did we keep Troy Parrott for 400 years? And then he got a couple of games here and there. I think was it yesterday, we've loaned out Valise for the season. I know that's obviously to try and get him a bit more game time. And I understand sometimes we're planning for the future and stuff, but we want players and strikers that are here, ready, like now, raring to go. So is Solanke that answer? I'm not 100% sure, but if it is, I will be pleased because we need number 9. We absolutely going into the season.
Matthew, is there someone else in your mind, if Solanke is not the answer, that you think would be a better fit for what we need right now?
I mean, to be fair, you did make a good point. I think the striker market right now is probably the most uninspiring it's ever really been since I've been watching football. I think you look around Europe and you look at some of the biggest teams in Europe at the moment, and they don't even have any really good striking options. Like, it is kind of an uninspiring time for that position, but I just still think that a lot of supporters are probably convincing themselves that Solanke is a good signing rather than reading the link and straight away feeling really excited about it. I think because we've sort of been starved of any big transfer news all summer. I mean, it's been the same old stuff with Eze. It's been vague Neto links here and there. There's never really been anything exciting for us to really get behind. I just think that any old news, any £60 million transfer talk is going to excite fans. But I think taking a step back and just looking at it objectively, a year ago today, we would have all laughed at the thought of paying £60 million for Solanke. And I just don't know if one good season really cuts it to be, the main Tottenham striker. I think maybe that money could be better spent elsewhere. Or, as I said, if, even if we brought in a marquee signing somewhere else in the pitch and, relied on maybe Richarlison a little bit more one more season and see if a better opportunity arises next season. I could see this time next year, us sat here having this conversation saying, why did we pay £60 million for Solanke off the back of one good season at the age of 26? It just feels like a really high risk signing and almost a bit of desperation because we need a striker so badly that Spurs are maybe going to end up overpaying just as they did for Richarlison, I think.
That might be a good point. What do you think about that, Tom, in terms of Solanke, whether he's our first choice or not? Because obviously he wasn't at the Euros, was he? So he's been there the whole summer, pretty much waiting, for a bid to be made on him. And we're now sitting here less than 2 weeks away from the start of the season, and we're now talking about making a bid for him. So do you think there's any element of this is maybe a panic buy with the fact that we haven't got someone through the door at this point, or maybe some of our first choice targets have eluded us and now we're going for Solanke? Or do you think he was always on the list from the start?
I believe he was always on the list. I mean, it was always a toss-up between, I think, a pool of 3 players, probably Tony, Gyökeres, and Solanke himself. I mean, when you look at Tony, yeah, obviously the attitude problems, and he's soon to be 29, so he's sort of coming out of his, we won't have too many years of Tony if we have Solanke. What is he, 26? So I think, yeah, I mean, I think Solanke was definitely always on the mind. I mean, if we're willing to pay this sort of fee, it suggests that it was always sort of a plan. But I think obviously having this big outlay obviously takes a lot of time and thought for both Levy and Ange and the club. So they just need to make sure it's the right decision. And I'm sure Ange has done his classic phone calls to Solanke, as he does. So yeah, I think this signing's always been within Spurs' best interest.
And what do you think, Mitch, about what Matthew was saying in terms of Solanke, a year later being that Kane replacement? If he's the one, look, if you think about it, it's probably a 20 million difference between what we might pay for Solanke in terms and compared to what we got for Harry Kane. So is he, if we do sign him for that kind of figure, is he always going to be held to that standard of, being that Harry Kane replacement? And, or do you feel like sometimes that doesn't really matter? It's all about the right player for the right team.
I think obviously Kane's boots are obviously big boots to fill, and I don't think coming in with no pre-season and things like that, he's going to come in and be able to fill them boots. But what you've also got to think is Kane. I think personally, Kane wouldn't have fit into the current system we're playing because his pressing off the ball wasn't really like a Solanke forward running at being aggressive at defenders. That was never Kane's style. So I think obviously it's a lot of money, 65 million, but he's done it at Bournemouth. So why can't he come to Spurs and do it at Spurs with a big price tag?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm when I first saw the links, I was like, "Is that really what we're going for?" But I think when you read deep into it, I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of what Tottenham want in that position, and I think in terms of what's available. So it's difficult to say whether, if there's nothing available, do you just panic and go for what's best on the market, even if it's not perfect? Or do you just kind of make the best of what you got and you just, if that's the best available, you go for that? It's a interesting kind of debate. What way you look at it? But let's round it up. Go on, James. Go on.
I just wanted to come back across with what Matthew said, and I totally agree. If you flip it slightly, and we were going into the season with Eze, Neto, and Solanke, we would all be buzzing as fans. We'd be like, we are so ready for the season, Champions League almost guaranteed, because you've got those three powerhouse signings, the two kids, wicked, we're ready. But the fact that it is, like you said, Sims, so late in the window, potentially only Solanke, I think that's why it feels like it's not as exciting. So if you add in sprinkling with like what Matthew said, with those two stars as well, then I think Solanke would do great, because then you've got so many options. It seems like all the big clubs have got so many options on the bench. You look at City, and they've usually got like Grealish on the bench, and you look at Chelsea, and they've got about 400 guys on the bench. But with Spurs, it's always like we just never have a deep squad. And then we get injuries, and it's so depleted, and then we're having to play kids. So yeah, I think if we could get in a few more signings, if we want Eze, if we want Neto, like, go get them. Like, what are we doing? What are we waiting around for? I just don't want Daniel Levy to do a deadline day thing trying to get someone in on the cheap, because also we've got like Solomon. Like, does anyone care about Solomon? Is he going to go out? Like,
looks like it.
We want an exciting player into the first team who's going to make a difference, which will then strengthen the bench and strengthen the squad.
So if we were to sign like a Neto with a Solanke, would that be sufficient for you?
I think it would. I absolutely think it would. I know maybe it sounds strange, like it doesn't make Solanke all of a sudden like a better player, but then you've got better options in the team and in the squad. And then you're looking at the first 11 and the bench thinking, bosh, like Spurs are ready for this season. Whereas they're like, oh, what's Richie doing? Is he injured? We've still got Lo Celso, who plays 3 games a season. It's that sort of difference. So I don't think Solanke is a bad player, but coming in on his own, that just is a lot more pressure, like Mitch said. Is he going to replace Harry Kane? Definitely not. But he's going to have to. Whereas if you sprinkle in a couple more star players, then you can spread the load and spread that pressure.
Go on, Matthew, are you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to what James said. I think as well, in terms of it being that sort of one signing, and I think we spoke previously about, is it a panic signing? Has he always been on the list? I think the main concern I have is that when we signed Richarlison, as I was saying, that was our last sort of marquee striker signing we made. I think we signed him very late in June, if I'm correct, maybe early July.
I think
So
for
it was
PSR reasons, if I remember rightly.
Sorry, say that again.
I think it was for PSR reasons. I think Everton had to sell him early.
Yeah, so it was sort of late June, and obviously, as you say, there was a bit of the PSR element there, but Spurs wouldn't have paid that much money unless they wanted him. So it was clear that they got him in because that was the target. And as you said, Solanke wasn't at the Euros. If we really wanted him, and if Ange really wanted him, I think he would have been here in July. I think he would have been, he's got a release clause as well. It's not like, I know they're going to try and negotiate a bit of a lower fee, but it's not like a situation where the longer the window goes on, the more it drags down. He has a release clause that could have always been negotiated around. And I just think this does scream of a little bit of a panic buy, something for Levy to appease the supporters without having to spend too much, but, just the right amount of money where we can class it as a big money signing.
All right. Well, look, I think we'll end it there. Really, really appreciate your guys' time for and your input on this debate. It was really, really great. I'm sure the listeners would have gained a lot from it. I want to thank James, Mitch, Tom, and Matthew for really contributing to this debate and giving their time. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. Whose side do you want? Do you think Solanke is the perfect striker for Spurs, or are you a bit skeptical on him joining Tottenham? We'll see you all very, very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.